The morning I walked out of that locked ward, I had exactly one thing on my mind. Not breakfast. Not freser. Not the feeling of sunlight on my face after 2 years. My son had used the legal system to cage me. I was about to use it to bury him. I'm 44 years old. I ran, a mid-size electrical contracting company my father built from nothing and passed to me when I was 32. I've got calluses on my hands, a truck with 180,000 miles on it, and until 2 years ago, I had a son I would have taken a bullet for. My wife passed from cancer when my son was 16. I raised him alone after that. Watched him graduate, helped him get his first apartment, co-signed his first car loan. He was my whole family. So when he started dating someone new about 3 years before all of this, I tried to be happy for him. She's different, Dad, he told me one night over dinner. She's smart. She knows what she wants. That's great, I said. When do I meet her? He paused just a beat too long. Soon. That pause, I should have caught it then. I didn't. She came over 2 weeks later. Polished. Put together. The kind of woman who calculates the worth of a room the second she walks into it. She looked at my house the way a contractor looks at a building they're about to demo, not admiring it, just assessing it. Your property is beautiful, she said, smiling. How much land do you have out back? About 4 acres, I said. She nodded slowly. Just MMM. I pulled my son aside before they left. How long has she been married? I asked. He stiffened. What are you talking about? There's a ring tan line on her left hand. She covered it with foundation, but it's still there. He didn't answer me that night. What he said 2 weeks later was worse. Dad, I need to talk to you about something. We're worried about you. Worried how? I said. You bebé en forgetting things. Saying things that don't make sense. Last week you told me Mom called you. My wife has been gone for 8 years. I said no such thing. I remember that conversation with my son perfectly. He was planting a seed. I didn't understand that yet. I never said that, I told him flatly. Dad, I never said that. He left. I thought it was over. 3 weeks later, at 6:30 in the morning, 2 sheriff's deputies showed up at my door with a court order. My son had filed an emergency petition for temporary guardianship, claiming I was suffering from rapid onset dementia and posed a danger to myself. A licensed physician, someone I had never met in my life, had signed a declaration supporting the claim. I was transported to a psychiatric evaluation facility. My phone was held at intake. I was told I would need to stay for observation. The irony wasn't lost on me. I had spent 20 years building a company that wired hospitals. Now I was a patient in one. Within 72 hours, the probate court granted my son temporary guardianship on an emergency ex parte basis. Those orders move fast when a doctor signs off. I had a right to contest it, but my son had already contacted my regular attorney and told him I had authorized my son to act on my behalf going forward. My attorney, believing him, stood down. I sat in that facility and slowly understood, piece by piece, what had just happened to me. You're not the first, said the man in the bed next to mine. He'd been there 11 months. Families do this more than people think. How do you fight it from in here? I asked. He looked at me with tired eyes. You find someone on the outside who hasn't been gotten to yet. I filed a written request with staff to contact my younger brother. That request was denied. My son, as my legal guardian, had restricted my approved contact list. He had built the cage carefully. I had to respect the construction, even sitting inside it. I had built that man from the ground up. Taught him to shake a hand, honor a commitment, look a person in the eye. And he had handed my entire life, my house, my company, my father's legacy, to a woman with a ring tan line and a plan, and locked the door behind me. He wasn't waiting to see how this played out. That was what cut deepest. He had not done this to protect me. He had done it to liquidate me. And somewhere on the other side of those locked doors, a woman who was still legally married to another man was counting money that had my father's sweat in it. I stopped being sad around day 12. What replaced it wasn't rage exactly. It was something quieter and more dangerous. It was patience. The full guardianship review hearing was 30 days out. I started planning on day 13, the full hearing arrived, and I was brought into the courtroom in street clothes. My son sat at the petitioner's table with an attorney I didn't recognize. The mistress was not present, but my son had a small smirk on his face when we made eye contact. The kind that says someone thinks they've already won. The judge appointed a guardian ad litem, an independent attorney to represent my interests. She was sharp, skeptical, and asked exactly the right question. Has the respondent received an independent neurological examination? She asked. The physician's declaration already on file is sufficient, the petitioner's attorney replied. That's not what I asked, she said. The judge ordered an independent evaluation. This bought me time. It also triggered my son's first major move. Within 48 hours, the facility informed me that my approved contact list had been updated by my guardian. My brother, the one person I'd been trying to reach, had been removed entirely. When I asked the floor manager about it, she looked genuinely uncomfortable. I'm sorry, she said quietly. I can't override guardian decisions on contact. Can I at least write a letter? I asked. Mail routes through the guardian's address, she said. Then she looked deliberately away and added, louder, the patient bathroom on this hall has a maintenance issue. Staff use the one near the supply closet by the side exit. I thought about that comment for 2 days. She was pointing me somewhere without saying a word directly. On the third day, a younger nurse handed me a pen with a small folded paper tucked underneath it. Written in careful handwriting was my brother's number, updated. I used the patient advocate's scheduled phone window the following afternoon. I've been trying to reach you for 3 weeks, my brother said, his voice tight. Your son told me you'd asked not to be contacted. He sounded so calm about it, I almost believed him. He's liquidating everything, I said. The house is listed. I need an elder law attorney, someone who has never heard from my son. Can you handle that? Already done, he said. I hired one 2 weeks ago. She's been trying to get standing in your case. I won't try to describe what it felt like to hear that.
Words won't do it. De independenti valjuaschen kame bak klean.
No cognitive impairment. No dementia indicators. The evaluating physician explicitly noted that my presentation was inconsistent with the emergency declaration used to initiate the guardianship. My son's attorney filed a motion to exclude the evaluation on a procedural technicality.
De judge dinaidit. Tenkame derti trick number 2.
My son visited me. First time since I'd been brought in. He sat across from me in the visitation room looking tired, which I found quietly satisfying. Dad, he said. This doesn't have to keep going.
Sign the house over.
Let us manage the company. You'll be taken care of. Comfortable. You won't have to fight anymore. I looked at him for a long moment. Who talked you into this? I said. What exactly did she promise you? She loves me. She loved whoever she was married to before you two, I said. Right up until something better came along. His jaw tightened.
Sign the papers, Dad.
Get out, I said. He left. 3 days later, the facility received a transfer order signed by my son as guardian, directing that I be moved to a long-term memory care facility 200 miles away. Dirty trick number 3, and by far the most calculated. A transfer that far would have removed me from the current judge's jurisdiction, disrupted the pending evaluation process, and placed me hours away from my brother and my attorney. The transfer was scheduled for a Friday morning. My attorney filed an emergency motion Thursday afternoon to stay it, citing the active evaluation and a pattern of potential guardian misconduct. The judge granted the stay Thursday evening. When the transport van showed up Friday morning, the facility administrator met them at the door with a court order.
Devandro uva way empty.
My son called the facility 4 times that afternoon. The charge nurse told me about it later with the flattest expression I have ever seen on a human face. I put him on hold the last 2 calls, she said. His strategy was becoming clear: exhaust the process, close the house sale, move the money, and transfer me somewhere too far to fight back from. Every reckless move he made was logged, documented, added to the record. My strategy was simpler: stay in the game long enough for the truth to compile itself. After the failed transfer, my son's attorney filed an appeal challenging the independent evaluation ruling on procedural grounds. The appellate court took 4 months to resolve it. They ruled against him. Then came a motion challenging my attorney's standing to represent me, arguing the guardianship framework didn't permit an independently retained attorney without guardian approval. That consumed another 3 months before being denied. My son was doing what entitled people do when they're losing fairly, trying to win on exhaustion and technicalities. Bury the process in delays until either I broke or the assets were gone. My attorney had filed an emergency injunction freezing all asset transfers tied to the guardianship estate.
The house sale froze mid-transacción. Mais son los de Bayer.
He is going to be furious about that house deal, I told my attorney on a call. Good, she said without missing a beat. How long until the final review, at this rate? 6 to 8 more months minimum, she said. But every motion he files gets logged. Every delay tactic looks worse to the judge. He's building the case against himself. And so the months stretched. Appeals.
Countermotions.
Responses. 22 months total from the morning those deputies knocked on my door to the morning I finally walked out. 2 winters. 2 years of my company running without me, of clients drifting, of equipment being quietly sold off for fractions of its value. I spent those months keeping detailed written logs. Every date, every financial disclosure I overheard from staff, every document I was shown or asked to sign. Pages of small handwriting. My attorney had copies of all of it. When the final review hearing was set, 18 months after my son's first appeal was denied, the case that walked into that courtroom was not the same case from month 1. It was loaded. My attorney presented 3 core pieces. First, the independent neurological evaluation, clean and fully on the record. Second, a report from a certified forensic document examiner concluding that the physician's signature on the original emergency petition had been digitally copied onto a document the physician had never authored. The doctor had been located. He was furious. He was prepared to testify. Third, a forensic accounting of the guardianship estate. In 22 months, $340,000 had been moved from my business accounts to a joint account held by my son and the mistress. My company equipment had been sold piecemeal to a buyer who turned out to be the mistress's brother, at a fraction of assessed value. Then my attorney presented the emails. Recovered from accounts tied to the guardianship estate, they were dated 2 weeks before the emergency petition was filed. My son and the mistress discussing the property value. The business accounts. What she called the timeline. She had written in plain text, "Once it's done, we move fast. 2 months tops." 2 months tops. I had been inside 22. The courtroom got quiet when those emails went up on the screen. My son's attorney asked for a recess. The judge gave them 10 minutes. "She's going to offer to voluntarily withdraw the petition," my attorney whispered to me. "No fraud finding in exchange." "No," I said.
It gets you out today.
Same practical result. "I want every finding on the official record," I said. "I want all of it documented so no court anywhere ever looks at this case without knowing exactly what happened." She held my gaze for a beat, then nodded. When the hearing resumed, the offer came exactly as predicted: voluntary withdrawal, no findings. The judge looked over his glasses. "Counsel," he said, "I've reviewed the forensic document analysis. A quiet withdrawal does not resolve what appears to be fraud on this court." He terminated the guardianship effective immediately, ordered a full accounting of all transferred assets within 30 days, and referred the matter to the district attorney's office for criminal review. He said this last part while looking directly at my son. My son looked at me for the first time that day. He looked like a man who had just realized the ground beneath him wasn't ground at all.
He said nothing back.
The court had already said everything that needed to be said, and said it better than I ever could. I walked out of that facility on a Thursday afternoon in October. My brother was in the parking lot. He handed me a coffee, black, and we stood there without speaking for a minute. 2 years, I finally said. "Almost exactly," he said.
He drank the coffee.
It tasted like the rest of my life starting over. I sat in that courtroom for most of it. I watched the physician whose signature had been forged testify that he had never met me, had never performed any evaluation, and had never signed anything related to my case. He was visibly angry on the stand. That anger carried to the jury.
The forensic accountant walked through the 340,000 pesos transaction by transaction.
The emails went back up on the screen. The jury had them printed in front of them. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced my son to 7 years in state prison, with parole eligibility after 4. In his sentencing remarks, he described the offense as a calculated and prolonged betrayal of a parent, orchestrated for financial gain over the span of nearly 2 years. He said this directly to my son's face. My son stared at the table. "How are you holding up?" my attorney asked me quietly outside the courtroom afterward. "I genuinely don't know yet," I said. "That's a completely reasonable answer," she said. The mistress had taken a plea 2 months before trial: 3 years, mandatory full restitution, and a permanent bar from serving as guardian, trustee, or financial agent in our state. Her attorney told the court she accepted full responsibility. The civil judgment came 3 months after the criminal sentencing. Between compensatory and punitive damages, I was awarded $680,000. Most of it was already frozen from the injunction. Between the judgment, the recovered accounts, the invalidated house sale, and the returned equipment, I got back nearly everything. Nearly. 2 years of my life don't appear on any balance sheet. The business lost clients during the chaos. Some came back slowly, some didn't. The industry talks. But the company came back.
Slowly, then faster.
A hospital contract 6 months after I returned. My father would have appreciated that one specifically. One of the more unexpected outcomes of your son having you institutionalized is that the rest of your family apparently decides they should probably start staying in touch.
My brother calls every Sunday now.
A cousin I hadn't spoken to in 6 years reached out after the verdict. Small things, but they add up. The week I returned to my house, mine still, because that sale never closed, I walked every single room, checked every corner, went out back and stood on 4 acres in the dark and just breathed. My son is in prison. That is not a victory I know how to feel simply about. It just is what it is. He made his choices. Every single one of them had consequences with his name attached. What I want you to take away from this: document everything.
Every date, every dollar, every conversation.
If someone is making decisions about your life without your consent, write it down. The truth doesn't disappear, but it needs someone to hold on to it long enough for the system to catch up. I held on to mine for 2 years. It was enough. If you made it through every twist in this story and felt that verdict hit the way it should, you clearly have the patience and taste of someone who deserves more. So do yourself a favor and subscribe, because the next story is already waiting to wreck you just as thoroughly.